What began as a wave of anti-Nigerian hashtags spiraling across Ghana's social media feeds has exploded into border troops deployment, diplomatic chaos, and whispers of foreign manipulation. This is how Ghana unknowingly became the launchpad for Africa's next proxy war. In July 2025, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky posted what appeared to be a simple diplomatic announcement. Ghana had agreed to finance Ukrainian drone production and cooperate on border security. Within hours, this seemingly innocent statement had ignited a firestorm across West Africa, raising alarm bells from Accra to Ouagadougou. But what if I told you this wasn't just diplomatic miscommunication, but part of a calculated strategy to drag Ghana into a proxy war that could destabilize the entire Sahel region? From the controversial drone deal that never existed to the mysterious border skirmishes that killed 3 Ghanaian students near Burkina Faso border, to the manufactured anti-Nigerian protests flooding social media with hashtags like Nigeria must go. These aren't isolated incidents. They are interconnected pieces of a larger geopolitical chess game where Africa's most stable democracy is being positioned as a useful pawn in conflict it never chose to join. Pan-Africanist Kwesi Pratt Jr. issued a blunt warning. Zelensky must be stopped from exporting the chaos in Ukraine to Ghana. His support for terrorists in the alliance of Sahel states has caused enough problems for us already. In this episode, we are going to dive deep into how hidden forces are weaponizing Ghana's strategic position to ignite Africa's next war, how a fake military cooperation became the catalyst for regional destabilization, and why Ghana's response to these provocations could determine whether West Africa slides into chaos or stands united against foreign manipulation. Let's start with the lie that sparked it all. On July 11, 2025, Ukrainian President Zelensky posted on X claiming Ghana was ready to finance Ukraine's production of drones and wanted Ukraine to help secure the borders of its partners. Within hours, this explosive claim was amplified by Ukrainian embassies and picked up by news outlets worldwide. But here's the problem. It was completely false. West Africa Weekly responded with a damning investigation that exposed the announcement as a fabrication. According to sources familiar with the conversation between President Mahama and Zelensky, the claim was a complete distortion of what was actually discussed. The timing couldn't have been more absurd. Ghana is currently grappling with a $3.7 billion power sector debt, while President Mahama has been forced to introduce painful austerity measures, including cancelling fuel allowances for government officials. The idea that Ghana would divert funds to Ukrainian weapons manufacturing raised eyebrows across the continent. But this wasn't just about exaggeration. It was a deliberate attempt to draw Ghana into a foreign conflict. Mali, Niger, and Burkina Faso had already cut diplomatic ties with Ukraine over what they described as support for terrorist groups in the Sahel. The 3 nations had already filed a petition to the United Nations Security Council alleging Ukraine's involvement in destabilizing activities. Analysts argue that Zelensky's real goal was to use Ghana as a strategic entry point into West Africa, undermining the region's non-aligned stance and disrupting the growing cooperation between Ghana and the Sahel bloc. As veteran observers noted, this wasn't just about drones or border cooperation. It was about forcing Ghana to pick a side in a geopolitical conflict it never asked to join. And as the deception unfolded, events on the ground began to take a deadly turn. Just 2 weeks after Zelensky made the false claims, government stormed a school dormitory in Boku, a border town between Ghana and Burkina Faso, dragging 3 students into the night and executing them. These weren't random killings. They were targeted assassinations that forced Ghana to deploy additional troops to its border with Burkina Faso and shift from peacekeeping to peace enforcement. Baku sits just 14 kilometers from Burkina Faso, where Captain Ibrahim Traoré's revolutionary government is fighting both jihadist insurgents and what they claim is Ukrainian-backed terrorism. The timing wasn't coincidental. Ghana's government spokesman confirmed the student death necessitated drastic actions as the violence threatened to derail the peace-building process. But here's where it gets interesting. The alliance of Sahel states, Mali, Niger, and Burkina Faso had already accused Ukraine of providing drones and intelligence to rebel groups attacking their forces. Ukrainian military intelligence even admitted that 2 alleged rebels received necessary information that enabled their successful attack against Malian soldiers and Russian contractors. Now, with Zelensky claiming Ghana would finance Ukrainian drone production, How do you think Burkina Faso interpreted this threat? Ghana shares a 600-kilometer border with a country that believes Ukraine is arming terrorists. Captain Traoré's government had to wonder, was Ghana about to become Ukraine's weapon manufacturing hub right next door? The escalation was predictable. Within days, sustained gunfire echoed through Boku as unknown gunmen scaled school walls to hunt students they suspected of being connected to the chieftaincy conflict. A curfew was imposed from 2 p.m. to 6 a.m. Schools were evacuated, and Ghana found itself militarizing its northern border. But the manipulation didn't stop at diplomatic lies and border violence. It was about to flood Ghana's social media with manufactured hatred. As Ghana grappled with border violence and diplomatic pressure, something sinister emerged on social media. Suddenly, hashtags like Nigeria must go began trending, with coordinated bot network promoting what appeared to be organic protests demanding the expulsion of Nigerians from Ghana. The manufactured outrage reached its peak when hundreds of protesters gathered at Obra Spot in Accra, carrying placards accusing Nigerian communities of crimes including kidnapping, prostitution, and armed robbery. The most inflammatory message blamed the Igbo ethnic group for child disappearances. The timing aligned suspiciously with Ghana's mounting diplomatic challenges, offering a convenient diversion that threatened to fracture regional unity. Investigative journalists soon uncovered the deception. Fact-checkers traced many of the viral protest clips to unrelated events, including 2024 demonstrations and cultural festivals such as Ghana Party in Park held in London. The controversy around the so-called Igbo King, believed by many to have triggered the protest, was in fact based on a decade-old video stripped of context and recirculated for maximum inflammatory effect. Independent investigation revealed that the hashtag campaign was being driven by networks of coordinated bot accounts, some posing as Nigerians themselves and even calling for military retaliation against Ghana. The broader objective appeared to be the manufacturing of ethnic tensions strong enough to justify continued Western military presence in Ghana, at a time when revolutionary leaders in the Sahel were calling for African self-reliance and unity. In Nigeria, political figures expressed alarm over what they saw as sweeping criminalization of Nigerians in Ghana. Ghanaian officials were eventually forced to issue public clarifications, confirming that the viral video in question was outdated and irrelevant to current events. This development points not to genuine protests, but to a sophisticated psychological operation aimed at undermining West African solidarity. To understand why Ghana became a target, you have to understand what Captain Ibrahim Traoré represents to the global order. Since taking power in Burkina Faso, this young revolutionary has done something Western powers thought impossible. He has created a successful model of African resistance to neocolonialism. Traoré expelled French forces, partnered with Russia, and formed the alliance of Sahel states with Mali and Niger, more threatening to Western interests. He has proven that African countries can reject foreign military bases, control their own resources, and still maintain security. His anti-French, pro-African stance has inspired millions across the continent. When Traoré appeared armed at President Mahama's inauguration in January 2025, it wasn't just about personal security, it was a statement. Despite initial controversy over diplomatic protocol, the two leaders quickly developed what analysts called a warming relationship. By March, Mahama was visiting Ouagadougou, pledging to relay Sahelian grievances to ECOWAS and expand cooperation. This terrified Western strategists. Ghana, historically the most stable democracy in West Africa, was gravitating towards Traoré's revolutionary model. Worse still, Mahama explicitly rejected his predecessor's policy of isolating the Sahel leaders, instead advocating for dialogue and restoring trust. But Western powers had a solution: create crisis conditions that would force Ghana to choose Western military support over African solidarity. The Ukrainian drone deception wasn't random. It was designed to poison Ghana's relationship with the alliance of Sahel states while positioning Ukraine as an alternative security partner. How can leaders in Mali, Burkina Faso, and Niger trust President Mahama when Zelensky suggests financing drones used by terrorists against their armies? The goal was clear: destroy the emerging Ghana-Burkina Faso partnership before it could strengthen African unity. As this diplomatic chess game intensified, the manipulation extended far beyond Africa's borders, revealing the true scope of the hidden forces at work. The pattern becomes clear when you step back and examine the broader landscape. Ukraine's expansion into Africa isn't about humanitarian aid or agricultural cooperation. It's about opening new fronts in the global conflict with Russia. Since 2022, Ukraine has established 8 new embassies across Africa while conducting high-profile food aid initiatives. But behind the diplomatic smiles lies documented evidence of Ukrainian special operations in Sudan against Russian-backed paramilitaries and admitted involvement in attacks against Malian forces. The Jamestown Foundation reviewed Ukraine's strategic calculation. Ukraine is engaging in a worldwide manhunt for Russian forces as recruitment for military dwindles. Africa provides the perfect theater: weak state, ongoing conflict, and plausible deniability for proxy warfare. But Ukraine isn't acting alone. NATO has been expanding its African footprint for decades, with 8 missions launched since 2005. The Alliance's 2019 agreement with the African Union laid groundwork for enhanced cooperation, focused on strengthening NATO's deterrence and defense against threats from the south. This is where Ghana's strategic value becomes obvious. As West Africa's most stable democracy with strong institutions, Ghana provides the perfect cover for Western military expansion. Unlike the Sahel states that have expelled Western forces, Ghana maintains strategic legitimacy that can justify increased military cooperation. The SEPA analysis reveals the broader strategy. Putin is building an African springboard for war on the West, requiring Western powers to counter with their own proxy networks. Ghana, positioned between the revolutionary Sahel states and the Atlantic coast, becomes a crucial battleground. Russian networks, Chinese economic influence, and Western military presence are all converging on Africa. Ghana's choice isn't just about drones or border security. It's about which side of the new Cold War it will join. But as the hidden forces manipulate from the shadows, the most dangerous phase of their strategy is just beginning. The manipulation is reaching its climax, and Ghana stands at the center of a calculated effort to ignite regional conflict. The strategy is brilliant in its simplicity. Create multiple pressure points simultaneously until Ghana has no choice but to militarize and choose sides. First, the diplomatic pressure. Zelensky's false claims about drone financing weren't just lies, they were invitations for retaliation. By publicly declaring Ghana as Ukraine's military partner, he painted a target on Ghana's back for every group fighting Ukrainian-backed forces in the Sahel. Second, the border destabilization. The Boku violence that killed 3 students wasn't isolated ethnic conflict. It was part of a broader regional instability that forces Ghana to militarize its northern border. With jihadist groups and Ukrainian-supported rebels operating just kilometers away, Ghana must constantly choose between expensive military solutions or diplomatic accommodation. Third, the social media warfare. The manufactured anti-Nigerian protests serve multiple purposes. They distract from real issues, fragment African unity, and create domestic pressure for Ghana to seek external security partners. When your neighbors appears hostile, foreign military alliances becomes attractive. The ultimate goal is forcing Ghana to abandon its non-allied foreign policy and join a Western military alliance against the revolutionary Sahel states. This will complete the encirclement of Traoré's bloc while providing NATO with a democratic justification for increased African presence. But the most dangerous element is the economic trap. Ghana's $3.7 billion power sector debt makes the country vulnerable to conditional aid packages that require military cooperation. When you're drowning in debt, offers of military assistance come with strings attached. The hidden forces aren't just targeting Ghana. They are using Ghana to target the entire Pan-African project that threatens Western hegemony. As this continental chess game reaches its critical phase, Ghana's next move will determine not just its own future, but the fate of African independence itself. Here's where Ghana and all of Africa faces its moment of truth. The hidden forces have laid their trap, but the outcome isn't predetermined. Ghana can still choose the path of African solidarity over foreign manipulation. President Mahama has already shown he understands the game. Unlike his predecessor who isolated the Sahel state, Mahama embraces dialogue with revolutionary leaders. His March visit to Ouagadougou and commitment to restoring trust with the Alliance of Sahel states shows he recognizes where Ghana's real interests lie. But the pressure is immense. Western powers offer immediate military assistance, debt relief, and diplomatic support. The revolutionary path requires Ghana to resist foreign manipulation while building genuinely African solutions to African problems. It means choosing Pan-African unity over Western security guarantees. Ghana must remain vigilant against such foreign interference and uphold the non-aligned principles that have long safeguarded its sovereignty. The choice is between Nkrumah's visions of African independence or becoming another proxy in foreign conflict. The stakes couldn't be higher. If Ghana falls into the trap, it legitimizes Western military expansion throughout coastal West Africa. But if Ghana chooses African solidarity, it completes the Pan-African bloc stretching from the Atlantic to the Red Sea. Ghanaians, your government faces the most crucial foreign policy decision since independence. The hidden forces want you to fear your neighbors, distrust your brothers, and seek protection from those who colonize you. But Ibrahim Traoré and the revolutionary leaders offer a different path. True African unity based on mutual respect and shared sovereignty. The choice is yours. Become a useful idiot in someone else's war or stand with Africa's revolutionary future. This is Frontline Africa. If you value truth unfiltered and power reframed from an African lens, subscribe, like and drop your thoughts in the comments. Let us know what you feel about this matter. I am Ezekiel Enejeta. See you in the next one.